All right, so a little over a year ago, I got to know Tim, and then I finally met Tim. Tim and I have several mutual friends. We do the same thing day in and day out. I know what he goes through. The guy busts his butt. He owns a Man in Recovery Foundation. He has his own show on A&E called The Dope Man. He has a bunch of different things going on in his life, and he'll come up here and tell you a heck of a lot more about it. So without further ado, I want to bring my dear friend and my dear brother, Tim Ryan from Naperville.
How are we doing today? I just like to make sure I know what time it is. My name is Tim Ryan, grateful recovering alcoholic, drug addict, heroin addict, garbage can. I also go by R68915, that is my Illinois Department of Corrections number. That's where I got clean and sober. This has been a long road, and what I try to do when I carry a message is, man, you don't have to take the depths I took to get clean and sober. The hardest thing for me to ever do is put my hand up and say I need some help. My ego, my pride, were just out of proportion, and I blame God for everything. I like to play my own God. I didn't come from a bad family. We're all adopted. My older brother, he is just an ass. My little brother and sister are three-quarter Chippewa Indian. My dad worked at the Chicago Board of Trade for 26 years. In 26 years, he never missed a day of work. My mom helped co-found a very successful nonprofit. We're latchkey kids. If you don't know what that is, they gave you a key to get in the house after school. We had dinner every night at 6:30, and I thought things were good. I saw a gentleman in Chicago speak last year by the name of Dr. Gabor Mate. He's been working with people that struggle with addiction for 40 years out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And when I saw Dr. Gabor Mate speak, there was about 300 people in the audience, and he asked a question. He said, how many people here are adopted? And I put my hand up, about 20 of us did. He said, do you realize you're 48,000 times more susceptible to be an alcoholic or drug addict due to the abandonment issues? When he meets with someone struggling with addiction, he doesn't say why the addiction, he says why the pain. He said everybody that struggles with addiction has some underlying form of trauma. So I looked at my life. I was a kid that struggled with learning disabilities, ADD, dyslexia. I'm the stupid kid. I had an older brother that beat me up for 8 years straight every day. I was adopted, and I was molested by a female babysitter at 12 years old. Boom, there's all my trauma. What was my solution? Drugs and alcohol. Just lasted a little long. When I grew up outside of Chicago, the drinking age was 18 in Wisconsin. So from 14 years old up, we're going up to Wisconsin drinking every weekend. I like what it did. At 15, I got into cocaine. The first time I tried cocaine, I had a half gram fronted to me. That was the rest of my high school. But I can remember being a freshman in high school. I was 6'1", 170 pounds. I was a big guy, but I was in this class, SQ3R. That's all the stupid kids were. And people would come in, that's where all the dummies are. You know, so my self-esteem was down. I learned to protect myself with my mouth and my fists. The only thing I excelled at was water skiing. I was one of the top-ranked barefoot water skiers in the country from age 14 to 21. Outside of that, it was drinking and partying. I got on the work program. I get out of high school at 10:30, go home, or I go to the pizza shop, flip on the ovens, go home, water ski, go to the pizza shop, 4 o'clock, open up, and snort cocaine and drink every night. When I got out of high school, I had a 1.4 grade average. The ACT I took 5 times, and I got an 11 each time. The word there, how do you spell the word there? Anyone know? There's three different ways to spell it. At 49 years old, I can't tell you how to use it in a sentence. T-H-E-R-E-I-R, I don't comprehend it. Verbs, pronouns, adjectives weren't my motto. When I got out of high school, I had the opportunity to go to college, because back then in 1986, they had something called open admissions. So if you paid your bill, you can go to college. And I went down to college in Louisiana because they had the best intercollegiate water ski team in the country, and I went down to get on the water ski team. As soon as my mom left to go to the airport, I was at the liquor store and drunk within 2 hours. Back in 1986 and 85, ecstasy was legal in the state of Texas. They sold it in bars. So we started running a lot of drugs between Dallas, Houston, Vicksburg, Mississippi, and I got into a lot more mischief. Cocaine, ecstasy, acid, magic mushrooms. I didn't really like crystal meth. I had a bumper sticker on the back of my 78 Ford Fairmont that said, "In search of the eternal buzz." I was searching through happiness through drugs and alcohol. The water ski team I went to get on, I never got on. All the girls I wanted to date, I was never with them because for me the party never stopped. And I started seeing, you know, at night, I'm usually with myself, by myself, crying to myself, saying I can't stop. And I'd wake up saying, you know, tomorrow's going to be different, and by noon I'm back drinking and doing drugs. Got kicked out of school, came back to Chicago, did some odd jobs, ended up getting into dealing cocaine, freebasing cocaine, started stealing checks from my mom, and then got a buddy of mine that owned a gas station. I'd go cash checks at his gas station. He called my mom and said, you know, Mrs. Ryan, you do know your son has a drug problem. She said, what are you talking about? Well, Tim just cashed another one of your checks here for $400. So the cat was out of the bag. But the interesting thing is, this is now 1990. A week prior, I called the drug treatment center. I didn't like the way things were going in my life, and I actually went to this drug treatment center, and they were trying to run my parents' insurance, and they had me sit in a group for about an hour. And I had $400 in my pocket, and I'm like, you know, I don't think I want to be here, and I left, and I went on another run for a week. Cat came out of the bag in January of 1990. I checked myself into a place called Parkside Lodge in Mundelein, Illinois. When I went into drug treatment the first time, I went in with the thought pattern, I just want to quit doing drugs and I want to figure out how to drink like a normal person. It was drugs that were causing all the problem, not the drinking. I liked treatment. There's 38 of us. There was 13 Chicago cops. There was 4 people that worked for the railroad, and that's all I remember. So I instantly thought all these cops had a problem. Hey, that just fell out of my mouth. And piece of food, sorry. And I thought all these train conductors had a problem. What I didn't realize is they had the EAP contract, and that's where they went. But I was never listening to the similarities. I was always listening to the differences. A guy like me came in and spoke February 2nd of 1990, and the only reason I remember the day is my parents' wedding anniversary. And he shared his story, and when he was done, he looked at 38 of us. He said, one of you will be sober in a year, and a third of you will be dead. And right away I put up my hand. I said, excuse me, sir, there's 38 of us. He said, listen to me, kid, one of you will be sober and a third of you will be dead. I said, what do I do? He said, don't drink, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps. When I got out of treatment, my father sat me down and he said, Tim, where did we go wrong as parents? And to this day it really bothers me because my parents were the greatest people in the world. And I said, you didn't go wrong, you did everything right. My dad says, oh, I know that. Where are you going with this one, Pops? And he said, well, while you were in treatment, your mother and I got some help. See, those son of a guns from Al-Anon got to my mom and dad. Tim, I learned that we didn't cause your disease, we can't cure it, and we can't control it. And he says, I'm not going to contribute to it either. He said, you're welcome to come home, but the day you start drinking or using drugs, you're out of the house. So I started going to the Chris Lake Alano Club every day. Back in 1990, there was not many 21-year-olds trying to get clean and sober. And I'd do meetings and I'd put my hand up, I'm looking for a sponsor, nobody would pick on me, I'd be like, yes, got away with it again. I started an asphalt seal coating business, I was running a barefoot water ski school. Life was good, I started competing again, I won Illinois State, Wisconsin State, Michigan State. I slotted to win the US Nationals, was just in negotiations with a boat company and a wetsuit company to get sponsored, and at the Midwest Regionals I blew out 3 discs in my back and my career was over. And Dr. Wu introduced me to a little drug called Vicodin, $300 a month. At the time, I didn't like what pills did to me. I'm going to meetings, I'm trying to sponsor myself, play my own God. I can remember about 6 months in, this really big guy comes up to me, he looked right at me, he said, you were the stupidest person I've ever met. I said, what are you talking about? He said, kid, nobody's going to come up and be your sponsor. You got to go ask somebody. Well, that's how this program works. Nobody told me that. So I quit going to meetings. I didn't need this anymore. About 2 months later, I ended up at a Grateful Dead concert. And I can remember pulling into Tinley Park Music Theater, Poster and a fatty, $7. And I'm telling my buddy Matt, I said, that's a really cool poster, I want it. So I bought it, and I smoked that one joint, and within 2 days I was back to drinking and doing cocaine like it was nothing. Buried my businesses, my partner at the water ski school. I started hearing this too in my life, Tim, you're a liability. I'm taking the ski school down to Florida, and I'm going by myself, you're not coming with. Got a knock on my apartment door, you're evicted. I didn't realize you actually had to pay the bills. So one of my best friends in Austin, Texas called me up and he said, TR, why don't you pack up and move down here with me and get sober? So I head down to Austin, Texas. I start going to the bouldering group, going to meetings, and about 3 weeks in I wanted to get high. So I flipped on the news and I saw somebody was shot on 13th Street, so I hopped on my motorcycle and I went to 13th Street. I know if they're shooting people, they're selling drugs. I look for the hookers and I look for the gang banging, and believe me, I'm in a world of happiness. And I got back into cocaine. I pulled some credit card fraud on my buddy. Remember coming home from work, and all my stuff was packed on the front porch, and Trayson's crying saying, dude, how could you do this to me? And 2 days later, he had me arrested, and I got to spend 30 days in the Travis County Jail. Being an all-white guy from Chicago on an all-black pod did not go too well. Got my butt kicked a few times. I had the honor of sleeping in a 2-man cell, but I got to sleep on the floor next to the toilet. Couldn't wait to get out of there, and my MO always was, well, I'll go back to meetings. So I started going back to meetings, and I met these guys marketing cable television door to door, and we had the opportunity to go to Michigan. So I hightailed it out of Texas. I had a warrant out for 20 years. Crazy thing is, I was just back in Texas 3 days ago speaking, and it's the second time I've been back in that state. But, you know, I thought Texas was bad, and, you know, they didn't get me. I wasn't going back. I would travel the country and I would avoid that state so I couldn't get picked up. Wonderful thinking of an addict. We started traveling the country, marketing cable television. All these guys were in recovery. And you have to understand, I'm the guy that thought I could get sober through osmosis. If I hang out with sober people, I'll get sober. About a year later, I started my own marketing company. I ended up back in Williamsville, New York. I always had work ethic. Making money is very easy for me. Managing it, that's a whole different concept. My dad always had a philosophy, Tim, you make interest on your money, you don't pay interest. That's why he retired at 51 and 49 years old, I'm starting over, but that's okay. When I talk about money, I'm not talking about money to brag. I started this company, and within 6 months, I had the 3rd largest cable marketing company in the United States of America. I was making about $25,000 a week, free and clear. And what did I do? I went right back to drinking and doing cocaine. And I very quickly buried that business, destroyed the 60 families that were working for me. Came back to Chicago with my tail between my legs. I was $250,000 in debt. I owed the IRS $80,000. And for some reason, my parents let me come back in, and what's my MO? Go back to meetings. And I saw an ad in the Crystal Lake newspaper, double your income. So I applied for this job, and I show up at this guy's house, and he's got 2 desks set up in his basement, and he's wearing a suit. And I'm like, who the hell wears a suit to go to work in their own basement? But I'll go with it. But as I was talking with this guy, I saw a book on his desk called A New Pair of Glasses, wrote by Charlie C. I remembered it. I'm like, this son of a gun sober. So he's telling me he's a headhunter, and I get jobs for people in the technology space. And I said, man, that's great. I love to work here. He said, I'm not hiring you. I didn't tell you that. Book. Hey, Bob, you sober? He said, yeah, I'm 7 years sober. Why are you? I'm 2 years sober. You're hired. I wasn't 2 days sober. See, I'm the guy that could quote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous like the back of my hand. Acceptance, page 449, paragraph 2, 3rd edition. Page 417, paragraph 2, 4th edition. Rarely have we seen a person fail. It was thoroughly, I can read all that, I can memorize that stuff. I had no concept of what recovery was. So Bob hires me. My first month, I make $9 grand. 4 months in, I make $50,000. What do? Go right back to drinking and doing drugs. Now, Bob was a greedy man, and if I made 30 grand, he made 30 grand. So he wasn't getting rid of me, and things started to spiral out of control. I rented a house, and my girlfriend Holly was living with me, and I remember I was drunk one night, and She got in an argument, went to leave, and I slammed the door, and unfortunately her hand didn't make it out of the door and broke all her fingers. And these were just things that happened. Damn door, you should have got out quicker. I didn't realize it had to do with my addiction. And I got the opportunity to go work for one of our clients, a management consulting firm in Chicago. So I took this job. I lived an hour and a half outside of Chicago. If my boss was in at 6:30 in the morning, I was in at 6. If he left at 7 at night, I left at 7:30. I was a workaholic. They thought I'd be hiring 2 to 3 people a month. I was hiring 20 to 30 people a month. They very quickly bumped me up to $250,000 base salary. Everybody I'm hiring has MBAs and PhDs from schools like Cal Poly, Berkeley, Harvard, Yale, MIT, Northwestern, University of Chicago. My ego is through the roof. I got a brand new Harley. I got a brand new ski Nautique boat. I got a custom white Jeep. There's a Bennigan's restaurant I'd interview everybody at in the daytime, and I'd interview you at noon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I could sit at the bar and drink. And I'd have cocaine delivered, and the same thing started happening. Every night I'm with myself, by myself, crying to myself, saying I can't stop. I had all these things that made me feel good. The boat I rarely used, the Harley I almost killed myself on. I got all this money, and I am the loneliest person in the world. Miserable. But my ego was through the roof because I'm the guy at the 1.4 grade average who got the 11 on his ACT 5 times. And I'm hiring and making more money than all these well-educated individuals. I walked into work one day, and there was a beautiful lady sitting at the front desk. She had a peach outfit on. And I walked in with my smart mouth and I said, "Hey Peachy, how are you?" She said, "I'm good." I said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Shannon Hoban, the new receptionist." "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Tim Ryan, the director of recruiting." She goes, "Oh, you're the jerk that didn't want to hire me." I go, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Weren't you looking to hire a personal assistant about a month ago? Weren't you given my resume?" I said, "You're the banker lady, aren't you?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't like bankers. I never called you in for an interview, but I'll make it up to you. I'll take you out for a drink," because I was good at that. So about 2 weeks later, Vic and I take Shannon down to Bennigan's restaurant. She has a couple beers and gets up and goes to the bathroom. Vic's like, "Boy, she's really cute. I'm going to ask her out." I said, "No, buddy, I got this one in the bag." I waited for her to get out of the bathroom, and she came out, and I gave her a kiss. I said, "You're my new girlfriend." True story. She said, "I'd like that, but I have one question to ask you. Do you do drugs?" "No." "Why would you ask me a stupid question like that?" She said, "Well, I've got a 3-year-old son by the name of Nicholas who's got a deadbeat dad who's a drug addict. And I want nothing to do with the drug addict." I said, "Man, I don't do drugs." She said, "I would love to go on another date with you." She went to Naperville, went to Chicago, and bought a 1/4 ounce of cocaine. About 5 months later, the pill didn't work, and Shannon's pregnant. So I dragged her ass down to the courthouse, and I married her. I married her, I adopted Nick, and then Max came along. And 9 months after Max was born, she was pregnant with Tanner. And 9 months after Tanner was born, she was pregnant with Abby. The one thing I was good at was making babies. That's easy. Taking care of them, now that's a whole nother concept. What got me off the cocaine? Shannon's living with me. We're married now. We got a townhouse. I'm working. Nick's 5. Max is 14 months old. She's pregnant with Tanner. My wife realizes she is living with a full-blown alcoholic and drug addict. But she tried to rescue me. She tried to save me. She kept our secret. She didn't tell anybody. I'd woke up from a bender a couple days. My 14-month-old son Max was crawling towards my home office, and I went and picked him up, threw him against the wall. No, I put him in his room. I didn't throw him against the wall. And I went and opened my office door, and there was rocks of cocaine all over the floor. If my son would have pushed that door open and put one of those rocks in his mouth, it would have killed him. So immediately, what's memo? Going back to meetings. And the West Suburban Fellowship Club had opened in Naperville 2 days prior, and I showed up there and got a sponsor. And I'm really good at doing step 1, 2, and 3. That's easy. 4-step, nah, I don't think I ever did that, but I made it clean over a year. I started another company, making good money. My neighbor and I were running 35 Cub Scout dens. doing every parade, Pinewood Derby, building my wife and 4 kids a beautiful house out in the suburbs. Life was really good. And then I met Joel. Joel came into one of those meetings, and we're both the same age, 32 at the time. Turns out 10 years prior, Joel had worked for a company in Chicago called On Time Courier as a bike messenger. And I said, did you work at the place on Randolph Street? He said, yeah. I said, was Mike your manager? He said, yeah, how do you know Mike? I said, did you know Darris? He said, yeah, that hillbilly from Louisiana with the red pickup truck. I said, yep, that's Darris. He goes, how do you know Darris? I said, he is my best friend in college. When I moved up here, he came with me. So Joel had worked with my buddy from college 10 years prior in Chicago, so we had an instant bond. We started hanging out, and about 3 weeks later, Joel asked me to take him to Chicago to move out of his apartment. Now remember, I'm over a year clean and sober, but I'm not applying the tools of recovery in my life, because I'm the guy that thought I'd get sober through osmosis. And we're moving Joel out, and out of the bedroom his roommate Sava pops. What are you doing here? I said, I'm moving out. Joel, what are you doing? Heroin, you want to do some? Sure. That quick, 1 bag. That 1 bag of heroin is what I thought I was looking for. That 1 bag of heroin absolutely destroyed my world, and a lot of people near and dear to me. About 3 weeks later, I got sick. I can remember it was 90 degrees, and I'm sitting in the lawn chair in my yard throwing up. And Saba calls, and he says, hey man, what's going on? I said, dude, I got the flu awful. I said, what do you mean? What kind of signs? I said, I don't know, I'm hot, I'm cold. He said, have you been doing heroin since you saw me? I said, yeah, your other buddy there would bring me a bag or 2 a day, but he didn't show up today. Saba says, I'm on my way over. And he shows up about an hour later, he gives me a bag of heroin, he says, snort this. And I did, and I was instantly fine. So I knew I could never run out of heroin. That was my answer. Then I got introduced to a guy, Ray, who was 3rd highest up with the street gang called the Maniac Latin Disciples in Chicago, a ruthless gang, and Ray was my friend. And I very quickly went from 1 bag a day to 2 to 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 to 50 bags of heroin a day. And about a year in, and I hit it. Mike, I can remember my son Nick at 12 years old saying, why is Dad so happy all the time? I worked 18 hours a day, but I always told my wife I had to go to Chicago to interview people because I was a recruiter in the technology space, and I was over at Ray's doing heroin. When your drug dealer about a year in says, Tim, I'm concerned about you. I'm going to take you to the methadone clinic. You might have a problem. So Ray drove me to the methadone clinic and dropped me off. He said, don't call me anymore. I don't want you to die. So I got a methadone. And I can remember seeing that doctor, and yeah, get up to 100 milligrams, you'll be great. And then I called my wife. I said, honey, I'm a heroin addict. But I'm on methadone now, and I'm going to be cured. And then she started putting 2 together. That's why you were sick every 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Started putting everything together. So I got a methadone, got up to about 80, 85 milligrams, and I got really angry on it. It was my son Max's birthday, and I'd stepped on a toy and I went ballistic. My wife looked at me and said, you've got to get off this. Really? Hey Ray, how do I get off methadone? You get back on heroin. Honey, I got to go back on heroin. Okay, go. Then I went back on heroin. Then I tried getting on Suboxone, and I just used that as a crutch when I didn't have heroin. But what started happening in my life was I started getting things called consequences. I got a second DUI. I lost my license for 3 years. I look back at my 4 kids, and I love my kids more than anything in the world. And I did everything with my kids. But a lot of times I don't remember things because I was always jacked up on heroin. We went on vacations. I'd have to take 2 weeks worth of Suboxone so I wouldn't get dope sick. And the amount of work I had to put in just to function, and everyone in here knows, being an addict's a lot of work. And then you're trying to have a job or a family and a life, and the lies and the manipulation, and it was insane. When I lost my driver's license the second time, I lost it for 3 years. So about 3 months prior to me getting my license back, we bought another car, and About 2 weeks prior to me getting the license back, my wife's family always went up to Michigan, so I drove a car up. First time I drove, and brought a bunch of heroin with me, and I ran out. So I said I got to go back early, and I was coming around Lake Michigan through Indiana and Illinois, and I got discombobulated and went the wrong way, and I ended up in Blue Island, Illinois, and I got pulled over by the chief of police off duty in his pickup truck for not using a turn signal. And I got my first driving on revoke. 4 days ago, I was speaking in Kankakee, Illinois to 100 sheriffs. That son of a bitch was sitting right in the front row. He stood right up, he said, "I remember you, you little smart ass." What are the chances of this? I'm presenting to you now, and you're the jerk that gave me my first driving on revoke. When I got that, now I know I'm going to lose my license for 2 more years, so I got a case of the efforts, and I kept driving. But I can remember Shannon coming back, and her and my brother-in-law having to drive an hour and a half to go get my car, pay $1,000 to get it out. See, my decisions started causing repercussions to a lot of other people. 2 weeks later, I was driving in Chicago, and I got pulled over by Officer White. Now I was a slick drug addict. See, when I would go to Ray's house on the west side, I'd dress nice, I'd wear a suit. I'd carry AA literature with me. Here's a bit of advice. If you're ever in Chicago and the light goes from green to yellow to red, it changes in 2 seconds. So in the suburbs, it's 5. If it changes, don't go through the light because you will get pulled over. So Officer White pulls me over. And he comes up to the car. "What are you doing?" So I'm just going to do a 12-step call, my friend. I work for Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, "Really?" He said, "Nobody works for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a volunteer program. You're going to buy drugs." "No, I'm not." And he searches me and he wrote me some tickets and he said, "You know what, my friend, you better quit driving. They will put you in prison." I had to do 30 days in Cook County Jail. 6 months later, I got pulled over in Plainfield, Illinois. Had to do 30 days in Will County Jail. And 2 months later, I got pulled over in Chicago again. Now there's 3.5 million people in Chicago. I got pulled over again in a different car, in a different part of town. By who? Officer White. Who gets pulled over by the same Chicago cop twice, 8 months apart in 2 different cars? I do. But in hindsight, that was God throwing me a life raft. And I didn't grab on. I can remember getting sentenced to prison. I could either take 6 months and have to do the whole time in Cook County Jail, or I could take a year in prison, become a convicted felon, but I'd be out in 61 days. I said, I'll go to prison, and I got sentenced on my wife's birthday. I can remember getting a Stateville Correctional Center, NRC, and that's where they process you and house you until they figure out one of 28 prisons they're shipping you to in Illinois, and you're locked down 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You never leave that cell. 3 decks of people screaming 24 hours a day. The food was horrendous. I literally ate bread and water for 2 weeks. And my beautiful daughter Abby turned 6 or 7 while I was in that cell. I couldn't call her. My son Max turned 10 to 11. I couldn't call him, and I swore I would never do this to my family again. When I got down to do my last 45 days in Southern Illinois in Vienna prison to me was a joke. It was a minimum security. I had a key to my own cell. I got a bunch of commissary. I can remember Larry Granderson was my cellmate, and I think he was 58 years old. The man had spent 38 years behind the wall. And I walked into my cell with 6 bags of food, and his eyes fell out of his head. He said, "Tim, in 38 years of prison, I've never had a cellie like you." I said, "Well, if we're going to be here, we might as well enjoy ourselves." I read books, I got a tan, and that was prison. But I can remember calling home, and we had caller ID, and it would come up prison. And I can remember hearing my wife say to my kids, "Hey, your dad's calling from the prison hotel in India. Would you like to talk to him?" See, we lied and told my 4 kids that I was going to India on business for 2 months. You surely don't tell your 4 kids that your dad's an alcoholic and a heroin addict and he can't stop driving cars to buy drugs. When I got out of prison, I got home and my beautiful wife sat me down and she said, "Tim, while you were in prison, I applied for a Dunham scholarship to go to nursing school." And I said, "You don't need to work. I make plenty of money." And she looked me right in the eyes. She said, Tim, the way you're living, you're going to end up in two places. You're going to end up dead, or you're going to end up back in prison. And we have 4 kids to take care of. I can't rely on you. Out of 10,000 applicants, she was selected number 1. 3 weeks later, I started another executive search firm, made a ton of money, had an office in the Wrigley Building, Michigan Avenue, downtown Chicago, and I went right back to doing dope. My wife not only worked part-time, she went to school full-time, took care of our 4 kids, took care of our house. She graduated top of her class in 3 years. Do you think I showed up to her graduation? No, I was dope sick. My oldest son, Nick, being 14, 15, 16, I was not a father to my son, I was a friend. See, I was a cool dad. I'd let Nick and his buddies drink in the basement, smoke weed. Hell, I think I occasionally tripped on acid with them. Shannon would go to Michigan with the other kids, Nick and I'd hang back and party. Of course, at the time, they didn't know I was doing heroin. Trying to trip on acid and shoot heroin, I don't recommend that. That didn't work out too well. December 16th of 2010, it was a Friday night. It was a Friday, and Shannon was having all the people over from nursing school. They're having a big party, and I was supposed to take the kids to a movie and dinner so she could have their party. And Shannon's taking a shower the night before, and instead of going up and making love to my beautiful wife in the shower, I went down and I stole the money for the party, and I drove one more time. I snuck the van out while she was in the shower. And I get halfway to Chicago and she's calling me, and I know what you're doing. Please turn around. I love you. Let's get you some help. Click, hang up. I get to Flacco's house because my buddy Ray had now committed suicide because his wife had died from an overdose and he couldn't handle it, so he killed himself. Flacco says, Tim, be careful. It's a new batch of heroin. This is pure. It's pretty dangerous. So I snorted a little bit and I drove away, and if it's that good, I might as well pull over and shoot some up. So I pulled over into the McDonald's on Grand Avenue and I shot up a bunch of heroin, put my spoon and syringe away, and I sat there. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm good. And I started driving. And next thing I remember, I'm being wheeled on a gurney into West Suburban Hospital with a Chicago cop yelling at me that I just killed 2 people. See, I had overdosed while driving and hit 2 cars. So for 5 hours, I've got the Chicago cop, you junkie, you blankety blank loser, you just killed these 2 people, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, get me out of the hospital, go book me. So they took me to the police station, and the other officer comes in. Nicest man in the world, and he says, hey man, I'm sorry about my partner, but he doesn't like you people. I said, what do you mean, you people? Well, you drug addicts, you junkies. See, my partner lost his brother to an overdose 6 months ago, so he's a little jaded. He said, I need to let you know something. He said, my partner was just messing with you. You didn't kill anyone. But you did put 4 people in the hospital, one being a 9-month-old baby. He said, you're in a lot of trouble, my friend. And you better pray those people are okay. I spent a week in Cook County Jail. For 4 days, nobody would take my calls, my wife, my mom. I eventually got through, and I was able to manipulate my mom to putting up the money to bail me out because Dad needed to be home for Christmas. December 23rd at 2 in the morning, for the umpteenth time, my beautiful wife is waiting outside of 26 in California, Cook County Jail, waiting for me to walk out. We got in the car. We drove home, not a word was said. We pulled into our garage, went into my office, and of course those famous words came out of my mouth. I'm sorry. And my wife looked at me and she said, Tim, you're sorry'd out. We'll talk about this in the morning. And as my wife went to go upstairs, I looked at her and I said, hey, honey, do you know where my glasses are? Because when I OD'd, I guess the airbag went off. She said, yeah, I went to Chicago. I got to the van. I got your glasses. They're on your desk. Your coat's in the closet. And as she turned to walk away, she said, oh, good job, Father of the Year. You do know all the kids' Christmas presents were hidden in the back of the van and half of them are missing. And I don't have money to buy them any new ones. She went upstairs to bed. I went to my closet, got my coat, opened up my coat pocket. There was all the heroin the cops never found. I went back shooting dope. That's what addicts do. Christmas Day, I had to watch the kids open what presents they had and hop a cab to Chicago to buy more heroin. That Monday, I went and retained the best lawyer. I gave him a $30,000 retainer, and I said, let's beat this bitch. They never got blood or urine. And Dick looked me right in the eyes. He said, Tim, we're not going to beat this. You're going back to prison. It's just a matter of for how long. Got to the point where I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't want to hurt myself. I was afraid to put a gun in my mouth and blow my head off. But I went deeper into my addiction. My day would consist of getting up at about 4:30 in the morning, shooting heroin, drinking vodka with my coffee. I would take the 8 o'clock express train down to Chicago because the bar opened at 9. I would have 4 or 5 martinis. I'd call Flocka, meet him at my office, get 5 grams of heroin, go in my office, shoot heroin. I'd go down to the Billy Goat Tavern. They opened at 10:30. I'd sit there till 12, 1, 2, have another 10, 15 martinis. I go back to my office, maybe make some phone calls, and people are like, how did you function? When pressure was on, I could make deals. But me being a headhunter, I could place somebody making 100 grand a year, I'm getting a $25,000 fee. So I always had money to get by and support my drug habit. But the sad fact of the matter is I'd usually spend 1 to 2 nights a week under Lower Wacker Drive with homeless people, because that's why it's more comfortable than being in my 5-bedroom house with my wife and 4 kids. Because that's where the disease of addiction takes you. About 3 months into fighting my case, now all my kids know Dad's a heroin addict. I'm profusely dope sick. I'm taking a hot bath. My 17-year-old son, Nick, walks in the bathroom. He said, what's wrong, Pops? I said, what do you think, you idiot? I'm dope sick. He said, not anymore, Dad. Today's your lucky day. And he threw 2 bags of heroin on the counter. And I got out of the tub and I snorted those 2 bags of heroin and instantly felt good. And I went in my son's room and I said, Nick, what the hell are you doing? He said, don't worry, Dad, I'm just selling a little bit. I said, Nick, this isn't weed, this is heroin. You know what this drug has done to me. You need to shut this down immediately. My son looked right at me and said, well, Dad, you're a successful drug addict. And I said, why would you say that? He said, well, we got a nice house, you got an office in the Wrigley building, you make a good living. See, in my son's delusional mind, because I functioned, he thought I was successful. 3 months later, my son and I were doing heroin together. That's how my son and I bonded. Doing drug runs, going to Chicago. Found him OD'd in a gas station. He lost his license. Now both of us don't have a driver's license. So I would pay his buddy Adam and Zach to drive us to Chicago. I can remember one day we're coming back, me, Nick, Adam, and Zach, and Adam said, can I try a bag? If you want to. Zach didn't try any. Adam did. Adam became a heroin addict. October 30th of 2012, Judge Wattis at 26 in California sentenced me to 7 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. When I went into prison, I left my wife and kids with absolutely not a dollar. 6 weeks prior, I had a commission check for 20 grand. My thinking was I'm going to spend 5 grand on drugs prior to going to prison because I knew about when they were going to sentence me. I'll leave my wife $15,000. Yeah, I spent all that on drugs. When I walked into prison the second time, I weighed 155 pounds. I was skin and bone. I was walking death. I had a $500 a day heroin habit, and I was drinking upwards of a gallon of vodka a day. That second time in Stateville Correctional Center, I defecated and vomited myself for 2 weeks straight. I did not sleep a wink for 30 days, not a wink. About 2 weeks in is when I finally looked up and I said, God, higher power, whatever's up there, please take away this obsession and compulsion to use, and I swear I will turn my will and life over to you, and please let me get into Sheridan Correctional Center. And son of a gun, the next day there was a brown bag in front of my cell. I was getting transferred to Sheridan Prison. In Illinois, there's 28 prisons. There's 2 that have therapeutic communities, and by the grace of God, I got into one of them. When I walked into Sheridan Correctional Center, I promise you, I was the happiest person ever to walk into the Illinois Department of Corrections. On paper, they gave me 7 years, but I'm not going to do 7. I got 3 years for my 3rd DUI, 3 years for my 5th driving on revoke, and a year for the spoon and syringe they found. So I've only got to do the top number. I got to do 3. They instantly cut it in half, so I'm going to do a year and a half. Mike, I can do this. I didn't realize being in a drug treatment program, I ultimately got 4.5 months good time. So I did a total of 13.5 months. I can remember they do 30 days in one building. It was like a seg building. You only got day room for an hour and a half at night. Otherwise, you're locked in your cell. And I can remember we're in day room one night and I see this Puerto Rican guy, about 40 years old. And I went up to him. I said, man, I know you. He said, man, you don't know me. Get the hell away from me. All right, whatever. About 10 minutes later, I went up to him. I said, I know who you are. Cook County Jail, 2002. You ran the deck. You're the guy that brought all the drugs in every night. He goes, me and you did X together, didn't we? I said, yes, sir. He said, you know, I've been on the same bit. That man was charged with attempted murder. He did 2.5 years in Cook County Jail, did 10 years at Shawnee, and was transferred to Sheridan to do the rest of his run. But what God was showing me was, Tim, this man has been locked up for your entire time of doing heroin. He has been incarcerated the entire time. Keep doing what you're doing, that's where you're going to be. I got 30 days in the orientation hall, and I can remember meeting with the lady who got sober through Christianity. And then she's kind of doing an assessment with me. I'm telling her my story and in and out of recovery, and she said, well, I'll tell you what your problem is. You blame God for everything, my friend. Yeah, start surrendering to His will. Start believing God. I got transferred over to the little building. I got into one of the little buildings and back. And I walk into my cell, and there was a big black guy sitting on a bunk reading an AA Big Book. And I walk into my cell and I said, hey man, how you doing? He looks up at me like I bothered him. And he goes, hey Whitey, are you into recovery? I said, yeah, why? He said, because if you're not, brother, you are not coming in this cell, because that's all we do in here. I said, I'm into recovery. He said, good, I'm Big Perk. Nice to meet you. I said, hey, Big Perk, I'm Tim. He said, Tim, I think I'm going to call you Powder. I said, you can call me whatever the hell you want. True story, word for word. Big Perk was a gang chief with the Unknown Vice Lords for 25 years in Chicago, one of the most ruthless street gangs. He had spent 23 years, 10 different stints behind the wall. 3 months prior to me walking in that cell, his son Hanson had been killed on the west side of Chicago. Hanson was not a gang member. Some guys were beating up a girl in front of a beauty shop. He spun him off, and some gang members came up, thought Hanson was beating her up, so they lit him up 7 times and killed him. Perk didn't have the money to get released to go to his own son's funeral. So we worked through that. My oldest son was in active addiction, and Perk wrote him letters, and we're in that cell 18 hours a day. We never got a TV. All we did was recovery. We went completely through the 12 steps. We studied the AA Big Book, the NA Basic Text, the Bible. We read hundreds of books, recovery, cosmic healing, business, you name it, we read it. In the day room at night, Big Perk and I'd sit on a bench and have a 12-step meeting. Come on, man, let's go do push-ups for noodles. Man, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to do me. When I was in prison, I had 0 expectations. I never expected a letter. I never expected a visit. And I never expected to pick up that phone and my wife or kids to answer. And if they did, it was a blessing. If I got a letter, it was a blessing. And if I got a visit, it was a blessing. My wife brought 2 of my kids to visit me every 2 weeks. I watched their corn grow, get cut down, grow again. And that's how I did my time. Beautiful house I built. My wife and 4 kids was lost in foreclosure while I was incarcerated, so Shannon had to move our entire house out, put it all in storage, take our 4 kids, change their schools, move in with her mother 20 miles away. My 3 boys lived in the basement. Shannon and Abby shared a room, and Mary had her own room because of my addiction. Father's Day of 2013, I called Shannon. I said, you bringing any of the kids a visit today? It's Father's Day. She said, absolutely. But I need to let you know something. I sent you a package, Tim. I'm like, cool, what'd you send me? Some magazines? She said, no, I sent you divorce papers. I said, I can't do it anymore.
But I'm grateful she did it while I was in prison because I was able to process it and I was able to work through it. And I'll never forget that meeting, sitting at that table saying, what are we gonna do now? And she said, I don't know, you're in here. I don't know what to do.
About 2 months prior to me getting out, Shannon came and met with me and she said, your mom's willing to step up and help. We have 3 choices. She will rent a house for all of us to cohabitate, and Shannon said, I'm not having it. She said she will rent a house for you and the kids if you want to do that, but I don't have a license and I don't know if that's going to work. She said, or your mom and I will help find you a place and we'll stay with my mom until you get on your feet. And I said, that's probably the best idea. I caught my case December 16th of 2010. I walked out of prison December 16th of 2013. For the first time in my life, 13 and a half months clean and sober. Shannon picked me up, went and picked up my dog Cabo, my yellow lab. Had that dog 15 and a half years, had to put her down this summer, rest in peace, Wobbs. We went to my townhouse. Her and my mom had found for me. Shannon had all our furniture from our home moved in there, pictures on the wall.
Nick, Max, Tanner, and Abby all came over for dinner that night. And that's the last time I was together with my former wife and 4 kids as a family.
4 days later, my parole agent showed up. As soon as Ramsey left, I was back at the Elno Club. I got another sponsor with 21 years. And I'd known John 18 years in and out of the rooms. And he said, Tim, are you willing to go to any length to stay sober? I said, yes, sir. We met every weekend for 6 months straight at a 7 a.m. meeting. Then we went to his house and studied the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Went completely through the 12 steps, and then we started studying a book called Drop the Rock on Character Defects and Shortcomings. We still meet every 2 to 3 weeks and study that book. When I got out of prison, I was willing to go to any length to do the next right thing. 3 days out of prison, I got a phone call from my old boss. And he said, Tim, I need your home address. God, another guy's gonna sue me. I said, for what? He said, well, I've got a commission check I owe you, and I found out you're out of prison. I'd like to send it to you. So I got a check in the mail for $4,500, and I immediately called Shannon. I said, come to my house. She said, why? I said, I have a check for $2,250. You can have half of it. I said, I ain't giving her all of it. And she said the kids are actually going to be able to have a good Christmas this year. We all did Christmas, spent the night at her mom's house. It was awesome. I went to work 3 weeks out of prison. I got a job back in the technology space. I took the 6 a.m. train from where I lived in Naperville down to Chicago. I walked to the other train station. I took another hour train to Palatine. I took a half-hour bus ride to the office. I commuted 4.5 hours a day to go to work. And I was back every night for the 8 o'clock meeting. See, what I learned to do, the most important thing in my life is my recovery and my relationship with God. I put those first. Not a relationship, not work, recovery. Without recovery, I'm dead in the water. If you are not in the middle of the herd, you're dead in the water. If you're hanging on the outsides, I promise you, you will get picked off. If you're dealing with heroin, you're gonna die. It's just a matter of time. About 3 months into working, I didn't want to do it anymore. I called my mom and I said, Mom, I need to borrow some money. She said, how much you need? I said, $15,000. She about fell out of her chair. She said, for what? I said, I want to set up Man in Recovery Foundation. I said, I'm going to need about $7 grand for the lawyers and accountants. I need to fast track this 501c3, and I'm going to live on the rest. And I thought I would get my foundation set up and pay myself 30, 40 grand a year and save the world. I had started a HA meeting, one of the first ones in Illinois, almost 4 years ago. And a pastor friend of mine had asked me to start it. And about 2 weeks in, I had a kid come up to me and he said, "Hey, put your little ass down." And about 2 weeks later, I had a mother come in with her daughter, just like you two, and say, "Hey, can I sit in on the meeting?" And I had this epiphany. You know what? I'm going to call the Family Addiction Support Group. So now I have families come with the addict at the same time. I run 6 of these different groups 6 nights a week in 6 different towns. I'll have anywhere from 50 people to 200 people. You come to my group, you are talking. What's your name, why you here, what brought you? Because we cannot help you if you sit in the corner and don't talk.
Amen.
And then we split it and we put the loved ones in one room and the addicts in the other. I don't care if you're high, if you're on maintenance, I'll meet you where you're at. I don't care what you do to get sober. Do the 12 steps, do Christian base, do smart recovery, do refuge, go chase squirrels if that keeps you sober. I don't care. And if they want to follow my path, I'll guide and direct you. So I started that, and then I started putting people into treatment. Lots of them. And I learned how to fast track the system in Illinois, because you got state insurance, it's a 12, 16 week wait. I can get you in 24 hours. I stumbled into getting a job in the treatment space. In a million years, I never thought I'd be doing what I do today. At about 19 months sober, my 20-year-old son, Nicholas, was back in treatment for the 6th time. And I remember going to meet with Nick, and he's like, "Dad, we got such a crazy story, man. We're going to go speak all over the country." I said, "Dude, I would love it. Get your ass sober, Nick." "Don't worry, Dad, I will." 30 days out of treatment, he's back in Cook County Jail, selling bogus pills, trying to buy heroin. He did 30 days in Cook County, got transferred to Kane County for a time he had OD'd and spit in an ambulance driver's face, so they charged him with assault of a peace officer. He did 15 days there. They released him. Shannon picked Nick up, took him to lunch and fed him and said, "Nick, we're done. You're not coming to my house, you're not coming to Dad's, because all you do is lie, cheat, and steal. Don't worry, my girlfriend and I got it all figured out." 5 days out of jail, I called Nick and I said, "Nick, come to my house and get some Narcan." "Don't worry, Dad, I ain't on that BS anymore." And I believed him. 2 days later, Shannon called me at 6 in the morning and said, "Nick overdosed, I'm coming to pick you up." I normally don't tell people this part of the story. Shannon picked me up and she said, "Tim, I talked to the hospital, he's unresponsive." And I took my cell phone and I plugged it into her charger. And instantly on the radio, a song came up from the band 6 AM called Courtesy Call. And it's a song about someone overdosing and dying in a hotel room. I instantly unplugged the phone and Shannon and I looked at each other and we didn't say a word. We got to Hinsdale Hospital, we ran into the emergency room. Tim and Shannon Ryan here to see our son Nick. He overdosed. And 30 seconds later, the chaplain walked out. I knew my son was dead. What was my next thought? Anyone, say it. No, my next thought was I'll be at 6 o'clock 12-step meeting that night. My son died on my 21-month sobriety date. I will be the first person to stand here and say I helped kill my own son. My son followed in my footsteps. Even though he died on my 21-month sobriety date, I will have to live with that for the rest of my life. And I had 2 choices that day. Go get high, poor me, or get my ass to a meeting. And I went to a meeting and I never looked back. This is where I carry my son today. I carry Nick's ashes in here. I try to live God's will and my son's will to the best of my ability. Having to go in and identify our son and then go tell his mother, yes, it's true, and bring her into that room and see her firstborn child laying there dead is a scream I will never forget. Shannon looked at me and she said, "Tim, I hate God. F God. God did not answer my prayers." And I said, "Shannon, what I'm going to say is going to sting, but you need to listen to me." I said, "Maybe God did answer our prayers. It's not the answer we're looking for." And 2 weeks later, Shannon and I had lunch. And she looked me right in the eyes. And she said, "Tim, for once in my life, I'm behind you 1,000%. She said, "I want you to go run your foundation. I want you to help people because I don't want any mother going through what I went through.
Heroin took you, my beautiful husband, took our beautiful home, and took my firstborn child. She said, I thought about what you said in the emergency room. She said, I truly believe God put Nick and I in your life for a reason. And had you go through all your struggles and had Nick go through his, to have Nick pass on to set the stage for what you're going to do next. And I'm just getting started. At my son's memorial service, we had 800 plus people. Half the people were in recovery that I'd never met. The next night, I went forward with the Narcan training program I was doing at the church. I laid my son to rest one night, and the next night, I trained 50 parents on Narcan. In the newspaper, it said, anti-heroin crusader loses son to overdose. And I had a lot of grief from my former in-laws and family that you're trying to write off your dead son for popularity. I didn't write the damn article. Started getting arrows shot at me because I started moving forward and I started helping people. The next week I spoke at the West Suburban Fellowship Club, and Nick's best friend Adam, who we started on heroin, that got out of treatment, was living in a sober home. My 15-year-old son Tanner had moved into my townhouse, and I said, Adam, you want to go see Tanner? He said, hell yeah. So we went to my house, and Tanner looked at Adam. He said, Adam, why don't you move out of that sober home and move in with me and my dad? I said, great idea. So we picked him up the next day, and Adam moved in with me. And my girlfriend Kirsten, who I met at the first 12-step meeting out of prison, sat next to, ended up leaving her husband and shacked up with me, go figure. Yo! They had been in prison 13 and a half months. But anyhow, Adam, man, went to meetings every day. His sponsor would have him meet him at the Alamo Club at 6 in the morning for 6 months straight. And after 6 months and one day, Ray said, meet me at noon. And Adam's like, hold on, I'll meet you at 6 in the morning. He said, no, I just wanted to see if your sorry ass was willing to go to any length, my friend. We'll meet at noon tomorrow and you can buy me lunch. So at about 10 months sober, Adam and his girlfriend, I had shipped down to my treatment center in Florida I was working for to get them trained up as behavioral health techs and to learn to do the admissions, because I was opening another treatment center in my town in Naperville, Illinois. And then all of a sudden my girlfriend says I'm pregnant. Man, I kept hearing this. What? I'm 46 years old. That ain't you. That ain't me. Yes, it is. Then I finally went and got the vasectomy I needed to get. And then little Mackenzie was born. What a gift to have a child clean and sober that's never seen her dad drink or use drugs. And when Mackenzie was 4 months old, my fiance attempted suicide. So I ended up getting her on a plane and flying her down to Florida to a mental health treatment facility. They thought she had postpartum depression. And I'm working and I'm traveling, so I needed a full-time nanny. So I hired my best friend in the world, Big Perk, former gang chief. You are now my nanny. True story. People are like, what? Like, man, you spend 18 hours a day in a cell with another man. I trust this man with my life. People thought I was insane, but that's due to recovery. So Perk was the nanny and dealing with Kirsten. Adam and Liz had come back, and they were back about 2 weeks, and my daughter Abby's struggling with depression with her brother dying, so I got her in Linden Oaks, and Liz and Adam drove me to go meet Shannon at Linden Oaks to do a family thing with Abby. And I can remember Adam saying that now I got a company truck my treatment center had bought me, and of course I don't drive, so I got a full-time driver. I do have a full-time driver in a company car. Only in recovery, baby. I ain't had a license in 16 and a half years, so recovery does not suck, I promise you that. And I can remember Adam saying, hey Tim, can I borrow your truck tonight to go to a meeting? And I said, yeah, why? And Liz had said why, and she said, well, the headlight's out in your truck, but hold on, we're driving your truck. Whatever, borrow it. So the next day we're at the treatment center, and Adam called in sick.
So at lunchtime, my office window looked right out at that White House. That was Adam's house. And Liz says, hey, I'm going home to check on Adam for lunch. Now, Adam was 20 months sober. And 5 minutes later, one of our clinicians ran in my office and said, get across the street, Adam's overdosed. I said, quit messing around. She said, get Narcan, I'm serious. And I ran across the street and kicked in the door, and there was my second son laid out dead with a needle in his arm. And what I had found out a month prior was Adam's girlfriend had caught him huffing in the kitchen, doing inhalants. And I said, Liz, why didn't you tell me? And she said, because Adam didn't want to disappoint you. He didn't want to let you down. In recovery, you are only as sick as your secrets. And Adam kept going to meetings and wearing the mask and not telling on himself. And if you slip up, man, it's okay. You got to tell on yourself, because if not, you're going to go through the motions, and that disease will tell you, it's okay to use one bag of heroin, which Adam did. And he was the 35th overdose death in DuPage County that year, and it was pure fentanyl. It killed him instantly. So had to lay Adam to rest, and had to fly my fiance back from treatment to say goodbye and get her back to treatment. And then she came back home December 23rd. The 25th, we had a blowout. Police were called, orders of protection were filed. We had to go to court. We ended up getting back together, but Kirsten never had postpartum depression. She was in a full psychotic break due to undiagnosed bipolar for 20 years. So we got her the right meds and got her the right therapist, and then she started abusing her gabapentin and taking 2, 3, 4, 40 to 50 a day, buying them off the internet, and had another suicide attempt. And we got her stable, and 3 months later there was another suicide attempt. And another order of protection. I came home from Florida, my house was cleaned out, everything was gone. And she had this delusion, because of her bipolar not being managed properly, that I was going to take everything. And these are things that have happened in recovery that I never had to pick up and use over. I'd call my sponsor, I'd go to meetings, I'd talk about it, I'd take suggestions, I prayed a lot. And then I went and married her ass. I did, true story. But you know, Kirsten, I finally said, look, you know, you got to get a new mental health doctor. And she works at her mental health as hard as her recovery, because she was 3.5 years sober. And her last suicide attempt, she went and drank after 3.5 years. And she drank with the intention of wanting to get drunk to eat all her lithium to kill herself, but she got so drunk she started messaging me. I got the cops there, and they were able to get her into detox, which she spent almost 2 weeks in a medical detox. And I said, it's my way or the highway. And she sees her mental health therapist, she puts recovery first, and things are good by the grace of God. Because we communicate, we talk, I don't judge. And I'm fortunate that I'm able to do the things I do, and I don't have to worry about coming home and my house being unpacked or my wife committing suicide. But you have to be attuned. And the only way I'm able to live this way is due to a 12-step based program. A lot of people get it screwed up. The reason you go through a 12-step based program is so you can take somebody else through the 12 steps. That's a miracle. Duh. But you can't take somebody through the 12 steps if you have not went it through them with a sponsor. This is a program of action. How long you been on your 4-step? I don't know, 6 months. Get a new sponsor, moron. You know how long my 4-step took me to write out? 3 hours. I knew everything. I put pen to paper, and then the next week I went and did it. You can't rest on your laurels. Most of the people I see that relapse and die, because I have attended since my son died,
August 1st of 2014, 121 funerals. How many funerals I've been to in 3.5 years. Quit going to meetings, work became more important, or a relationship became more important. That's what destroys more people in this program. You don't have to go to the depths I went to at 44 years old to get clean and sober. Got a clean house, get honest, and surround yourself with the winners. I do a Sunday morning walking meeting. We meet at 7:30. Steve's got 28 years. Jack has 23 years. Marty, rest his soul, had 38 years. Those are the types of people I associate with in recovery. Not that I don't hang with the newbies, but when it comes to the big book, the solution, I want their suggestions. No offense, I don't want suggestions from 3 kids that are 3 months sober. Best advice I ever heard, a buddy of mine, Brandon Novak, gave me. Do not take any suggestions from the last person you got high with. That's yourself. Your best thinking puts you in the worst situations. You have got to be in the middle of the herd. If you're on the outside, I promise you, you will get picked off. If you do not have a home group, get yourself one. Because what I needed was accountability, because I'm the best liar, cheat, thief in the world. And I needed to be called on my BS. Some of the things that have been allotted to me in recovery are gifts beyond my wildest dreams. My full-time job, I work for a treatment center out of Florida. I'm national director. I'm executive director and founder of a Man in Recovery Foundation. My motto is we take people from dope to hope, helping one addict at a time. I speak all over the country. I was in Florida Monday, I was in Dallas, Texas, Wednesday, Thursday, flew back Friday, flew in here yesterday, I'll fly out tonight. All the money I charge for speaking events, I put into my foundation. I give every dollar away. I do not keep a cent. I do not take a salary from my foundation. We've guided and directed over 3,000 people into treatment in the past 3 years. All of them without insurance or state insurance. Will help people get into sober homes. I've published a book called From Dope to Hope. You can buy it on Amazon Prime. What you saying? I had a TV show called The Dope Man, which you can also get on Amazon Prime. I don't get any royalties from that. I've been wrote up in 500 publications. I was a guest of the 2016 State of the Union address. Wrote up in Newsweek magazine as one of the 18 most interesting guests ever invited to the State of the Union. Old ex-con junkie Tim Ryan, sitting right here next to Michelle Obama. Well, whatever. Any of you guys been to the State of the Union? Didn't think so. CNN, Lisa Ling, Dr. Drew, Steve Harvey Show, Doctors TV Show, Nancy Grace, Varney and Company, you name it, I've done it. I could care less about any of that. What I care about is giving hope. And letting people know that if my punk ass can get sober, anybody can. God's opened a lot of doors. I walk through them. People think I have this great life. I literally live out of a suitcase in an airplane. I usually get home 3-4 days a week, and then it's time to be a father with my daughter, a husband to my wife. We got a shitload of kids. Between me and her, we got 8 of them. Nick's flying above, guiding us, and you know, if I look at God, God called Nicholas home and he blessed me with Mackenzie. It's all on your perspective and how you look at life and what you do with it. Never give up on yourself. Don't leave before the miracle happens. My name's Tim Ryan, Great for Recovery and Alcohol.